talking about some favorite 2022 stuff. Let's get into that. Let's get into your favorite female wrestlers. We'll start there. I'm gonna start, and I'm gonna give you my little list of some people that are some of my favorites, and some of the ones that I think are noteworthy. I'm gonna say Rhea Ripley. I'm gonna say Jade Cargill. So respectively WWE and AEW. But then here's one that you can't forget about, and it's always, like when Time Magazine does Person of the Year, it doesn't always have to be someone who did something great. It doesn't always have to be somebody who did something huge. It just has to be somebody you're like, well, yeah, I remember that person. I can't not forget that person. And I can't have Sasha Banks not on this list. Forget how many matches she had or what she did in the wrestling ring in 2022. We've been talking about her every week and looking at things about her since her departure. So I have to put her on there as an important female wrestler of 2022.
See, I can't. I'm just to me the whole Sasha Banks thing, that ship is sailed for me. I'm just kind of over it at this point. I mean, I get that she values herself more than WWE does from a monetary perspective, but at the end of the day, do you want to be a wrestler or do you want to be a movie star, an actress? What are your real goals at this point? I know some do both, but it seems like she wants to go. To me, she feels like she's trying to be more Hollywood than wrestler. So that ship kind of sailed for me. I respect what she's done for the game and what she's done in all of her years in the business. But for me, I got to add the one person that I would say has had a huge year that you just mentioned is Rhea Ripley. I mean, Rhea Ripley, to me, her trajectory going forward. I feel like she could be carrying the banner of the women's division for the next, going into the next decade. She's still young. She's a physically imposing, competitor. She has a cool look. She's, and they've actually made her in the Judgment Day. She's probably the best piece of the Judgment Day, which is interesting because I mean, when China was in DX, she was part of it, but she was, I wouldn't say China was the face of it. You know what I mean? I always thought DX, it was always Shawn Michaels and Triple H were the faces of DX. But for Judgment Day, Rhea Ripley, to me, she's the face of it. And that's not a disrespect to Balor or Priest, and obviously Mysterio. But that's just how good Ripley's doing. To me, she's probably, I wouldn't say she's number one. I didn't put them in any order. I just kind of listed a few just off the top of my head. But she's definitely, I think by the end of next year, we're going to be talking about her as maybe the number one female competitor in all wrestling. I also got to put Liv Morgan on the list. I think she's had a heck of a year. I mean, she's done a lot of great things. She's been in some great storylines. And I remember listening to Corey Graves' podcast, and he always, for a long time, he liked Liv. Everybody likes Liv. But, as a broadcaster, it was hard for him to sell people on who is Liv Morgan? What is she all about? And, she has gone through this huge, makeover of her character. It's evolved. And, she's just – I like where she's at right now. I mean, I think Rhea Ripley's, at this point is a higher ceiling than Liv Morgan for obvious reasons. But Liv Morgan's had a good year. And then from, Jade Cargill, you mentioned it. She's been crushing it in AEW. I mean, you can't forget about Becky Lynch. You can't forget about what she's done for the business. Becky Lynch has had a hell of a year. She's been doing some great things. And even without having the belt, she's great. She's doing some of her best work. She's cutting some of the best promos. And then you also, I mean, you can't forget about Bianca Belair. I think she gets a lot of flack for maybe not being the best on the mic, but she doesn't have to be the best on the mic. She's good enough where she doesn't need a mouthpiece to talk for her. She does well enough. She's fine. She can talk well enough. And obviously she's a physically imposing wrestler. I would say I'd like to see her and Rhea Ripley really go through a huge storyline, just them, because I think those two are so strong. They're very strong women. I want to see them just have a solid, powerful match. And then from the AEW, another AEW wrestler that I really like right now in the women's division is Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. I think even without the championship these days, she's still very relevant. She doesn't have to have the belt to be relevant. I mean, we know she's part of her little faction there. And the best part is she's kind of in the background. Where Jamie Hayter's the champion, but we all know who the star of the show is. It's Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. I mean, there's a few other women, but those are the ones that come to mind. I think the women's division is really evolved, even this year. I think in 2022, this has been the best year, not just in WWE, but across the entire wrestling landscape. I think this is the best I've seen women's wrestling in a long time, maybe if ever. And I think 2023 could be even better. There's so much talent right now that's not even in WWE, not in AEW, just other promotions that are they put on great shows. So it's the sky's the limit for the women's side of wrestling.
You didn't mention Doudrop. I'm a little sad there that you did not mention Doudrop. I mean, she started the year out in the women's title match at the Royal Rumble in what I think might be the match of the year. But all sarcastic aside, those were all good picks. And I think I agree with you with Jamie Hayter. She had a really good match to win that championship. But I don't necessarily say, from and I understand from a deep, dark wrestling perspective where you're deep diving into, wins and losses and stuff like that. You can have a little more of a factual opinion, but these are just people who kind of stuck out to you as just having really good years. It's not so much about the championships or the wins or losses or the technical, how long their matches were and what they kind of brought in that perspective. It's just and that's why I picked Sasha Banks, because she's just somebody who we know she's going to New Japan this upcoming January, on January the 4th for the Wrestle Kingdom show. And it's just, since she's been gone, it's just been talking about where is she? When's she coming back? Is she coming back? Where's she going next? She hasn't fallen from the public conscience. So for that reason, I had to put her on this list. But moving over to the men, obviously we're going to, Roman Reigns. That's an easy one. He's been the champion from year beginning, and he will be champion come year's end. That's no debate. But some of the people who had a breakout year, and you got to go easily. Sami Zayn. I got to pick him. What are some of the guys in your list?
You stole my thunder, man. You know me. We've been doing this show we're going to be going on 6 years. That we started back in 2017, so we've been doing this for a while. And if you go back to a few years ago, you remember this very well. I was not the biggest Sami Zayn fan. I've always been a Kevin Owens guy over Sami Zayn. I've always thought that Kevin Owens was the better all-around talent. But I got to tell you, I got to give credit where credit is due. Sami Zayn is doing some of his best work that I've ever seen him do. And I have to say, I've come around on Sami Zayn, especially, for 2022. I think him aligning himself as with the bloodline and as the honorary Uso, this whole storyline that he's part of this bloodline with Roman Reigns, the Usos, Solo Sikoa. I mean, he's doing some great work. And honestly, I think he might be more over than I think he's more over than Roman Reigns right now. I just feel that every time I see him out there, I feel like they're doing the whole Sammy Uso. I think Roman gets his due, and Roman obviously is on the in our top echelon of wrestlers, and obviously in the top in 2022. But Sami Zayn, I think he might be the most over wrestler in the business as a whole right now. I mean, I got to give credit where credit is due. That he's been doing a hell of a job, and I can't wait to see this whole breakup eventually of Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. I can't wait to see that whole thing pop off. That's gonna be a lot of fun. And then speaking of Kevin Owens has to be on this list for another reason. He's doing some of his best work. I mean, I love the fact that he's back to being that prize fighter that we all love. I think I wouldn't have put him in this maybe a few months ago, but I feel like in the last quarter of the year especially, I feel like he's doing some of his best work. He's hot on the mic, he's rocking and rolling there. He puts on great matches. He's on his game right now. And even with that knee injury that he's been working through, I don't know what the latest is on that, but he's obviously been working through it. He's been working matches even with the knee, so he's one tough SOB to begin with. So that's another guy. And then obviously, how can you forget two other names? One from AEW and one from WWE. I'll start with WWE. We'll just continue on that train just for a minute. Seth freaking Rollins.
Seth Rollins on my list as well, yeah.
Yeah, he's the man. I mean, Seth Rollins, and I'll say this, I know I mentioned my dad earlier being a casual wrestling fan. he keeps up on Seth Rollins because Seth Rollins is just that freaking entertaining. No, I guess pun intended there. Seth Rollins is just doing some great stuff right now. He doesn't need the title to be, again, he doesn't need the title to be where he is. I mean, he is the mountain, as he said, as in that recent exchange with our boy Theory there. So I mean, Seth Rollins is on his game. I mean, Seth Rollins is one of those guys that's going to be carrying the business, forward, going into the next decade. He's still young enough where he's got a lot of good years ahead of him. And then how can you not have this guy on here? MJF. How can you not put MJF on this?
No, MJF, another one. He's definitely on my list. And even if he didn't win the championship, I would say would be on my list.
Yeah, he's the best promo in the business right now. I don't care what anybody says. I think I would say Sami Zayn is the most over at this point, but I would say I think the best all-around talent in 2022 is MJF. I think MJF is doing the best work in the business right now. I think he's commanding a lot of money coming to that bidding war of 2024 that we've heard a million times, but it doesn't get old for me because MJF just keeps cutting really great promos. I think he's doing some great work in the ring. He just had a match recently where he against Ricky Starks, who I'm very high on. I think Ricky Starks is a guy in that same Rhea Ripley situation where I think the trajectory on Ricky Starks, he's going to be really good in 2023. He'll be somebody we'll be talking about next year for sure. But with MJF, that finish made Ricky Starks actually look really good because MJF had to use the low blow tactic to get the 1-2-3. So I mean that put Ricky Starks a little bit even in an upper echelon in the business in AEW as well. But MJF is he's on a roll. I'm looking forward to every time MJF's on my screen. I don't care what I'm doing. Like if I'm watching something kind of casually, if I hear we're gonna hear from him next. I stop what I'm doing and I lock right in because MJF to me is must-see TV. The only other person that compares to him in the business nowadays is Roman Reigns. You could split hairs. 1A, Roman Reigns, MJF. Those two are they're on a different level than everybody else right now.
I'm going to add Jon Moxley to that. I had all those people on my list as well, except for Kevin Owens. But in place of that, I had Jon Moxley. And Jon Moxley I'm going to add to my list because he wasn't doing anything grand that really stuck out, but he was a real workhorse in 2022 and really took the company through a lot of times and turmoils through that championship from Adam Page to CM Punk, to all these, people losing the belts, interim belts. And I feel like Jon Moxley really kind of weathered the storm. He was one of the only constants when it came to that, especially in that title picture where the belt was switching hands and being vacated all the time. He was somebody who kind of carried the company for a good part of the year for AEW. So I got to have him on my list for 2022.
Yeah, I can't argue with Jon Moxley. I mean, again, we're not doing any hard lists. It's just kind of notable names that we've been really keeping a keen eye on for 2022. And I think the sky's the limit for him. I will say though, our combined list of we've kind of overlapped a few names, but there's one faction that has kind of overlapped that entire group, and it's the old Shield faction. You got Rollins on the list. You got Mox on the list, and you got Roman Reigns on the list. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. I know the Shield's been, they haven't been a thing for a few years, but just seeing how they all are doing as single and solo acts, and I consider, Roman Reigns he's the face of the Bloodline, but he's, to me, even before that, him as a solo act, has been fantastic. They've all done really well. Jon Moxley's, been doing the Blackpool Combat Club, but still, they're still doing singles matches. So that's how I look at that as a solo competitor. So, Jon Moxley's, a guy that I would add to my list as well. I think he's really good. There's some other names on there. I think if you want to bank on some superstars for 2023, I'll throw one name out there. He didn't make my list this year, but I probably would put him on my list next year, barring anything crazy, and that's Austin Theory. I think Austin Theory is one of those guys that, me, I've been high on him for a long time. I think he folks like Austin Theory and Rhea Ripley are going to carry the WWE banner into the next decade. They're both still in their 20s. I think they're in mid-20s, maybe early 20s. I know they're pups in this business because you're not really hitting your peak in wrestling until your late mid to late 30s anyway, so they're just getting into the business from that standpoint. So you're going to see Theory and you're going to see Ripley. They're going to be carrying this. They're going to be carrying the banner for WWE, I think, going forward.
Speaking of like the Shield, there, let's talk about that. Let's exclude the Bloodline, right? Let's just, because they probably are the overall best ones. But outside of the Bloodline, what are your favorite factions from 2022?
Oh, I mean, I really like the Blackpool Combat Club. I mean, I think
better than Jericho Appreciation Society.
I don't mind Jericho Appreciation Society. I wouldn't put them up there as my as like a top faction for me. To me, it's kind of gotten stale for me. I mean, I watched Dynamite this past week, and I don't know. I feel like even in that exchange between Jericho and Starks, I thought Starks showed more stardom than Jericho did in that sequence. Obviously, Jericho's the bigger name. He's the bigger star. We understand that. He's had a great career. But right now, I just feel like JAS is just kind of, to me, they're kind of stale. That's just kind of how I'm looking at them. I would say, and if I can't believe I'm saying this, but I gotta put like the Death Triangle and the Elite on there. I mean, they're a collective group. And I think I know we've been having this best of 7, and I probably wouldn't have put either one on my list, going into the end of this year. But the way these matches and how they've kept people interested in this whole, best of 7 series with great finishes and just great matches, I got to put them up there as some of the best groups. I mean, again, Blackpool Combat Club, even without Rigo nowadays, that's still pretty damn good. You got Cesaro in the mix. You have Moxley, Danielson. You got a lot of these great guys that are a part of that. And I'll tell you right now, I mean, Wheeler Yuta, I mean, that's a story right there. That's a guy who he had a breakout in 2022. So, I mean, who would you have as factions for you?
Those are good factions. I would probably say the one outside, obviously, the Bloodline, right? Let's say somebody that's top of my list has got to be Judgment Day. They're evolved throughout the year. You think they're going to break up when, Edge was removed from the group, and they only got stronger. And more importantly, they probably revitalized and or made a career for Dominic Mysterio. Because, I mean, fans' perspective, myself included, was not interested in anything Dominic Mysterio was doing before he joined Judgment Day.
Yeah, no, you know what? I can't believe I omitted Judgment Day on my list there. But I mean, there's so many different ones out there that I really like. Judgment Day is definitely, like you said, Dominic Mysterio. He's found a home, so to speak, with this whole Judgment Day, Rhea Ripley. And here's the thing. This Judgment Day, and I know I just talked about it a moment ago, this faction has made a star in Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley's a star. I don't care what anybody says. Rhea Ripley is a star, and they made, like, she was always good. Like, she was always, interesting. She always put on good matches in my book. But with her being inserted into the Judgment Day, I just got to say, dude, she's a star. She's the star of that faction. And you know what? She's so powerful that they had to bring Mia Yim into the OC to kind of even the odds, because Rhea Ripley was kicking the crap out of Gallows and Anderson for a little bit there.
So moving on to some favorite matches of the year, and I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be biased here at all. I attended the Rumble, WrestleMania, and Survivor Series. I didn't get a chance to attend some pay-per-views that I like to normally attend this year, and hopefully maybe I'll be attending like a SummerSlam in the future. But I really wish I did get to attend SummerSlam and or Clash at the Castle, another event that I would have loved to go to. So I'm not going to be biased here, because some of the matches from the pay-per-views I attended, like the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, are not on this list, and SummerSlam and Clash at the Castle are. And I'll start at the top of the list, what I probably think might be, at least in WWE terms, match of the year. Clash at the Castle, Sheamus and Gunther/Walter.
Dude, you stole my thunder, man. I'm sitting here looking at my, I wrote some matches down, and that's one of the names, man. That's, that Gunther and Sheamus at Clash at the Castle. I mean, how can you not like that match? That match was the show for me at Clash of the Castle. That was probably worth people spending the money on the Peacock Network just to watch those two just throw bombs and as Sheamus says, banger after banger after banger after banger, because that match was a banger. Gunther great job on his end too. I mean, you stole my thunder. I can't believe we actually agreed on one of our matches here. Well, what's your next one?
I'm gonna say, and obviously I was in person for Rock and Roman Reigns and Brock for the winner take all championship match, but I think obviously their SummerSlam match, Last Man Standing. It was just so entertaining, seeing things you've never seen before, with the ring being raised up by the tractor. I don't, like I said, match of the year. I mean, was it a Dave Meltzer 5-star match? I don't know, but entertainment wise and seeing things you've never seen before, I really enjoyed the Brock versus Roman. I didn't know how they'd be able to top themselves and how they'd keep that storyline going, because obviously we know that it was supposed to be Randy Orton and Roman Reigns originally until Randy Orton got hurt. But that ended up being, at least when it comes to Roman Reigns, my favorite match of his of 2022.
I can't argue with that. That's not on my list, but that was a great match, and especially for them to insert somebody of the caliber of Brock Lesnar over at Randy Orton. That's you can't go wrong there, because obviously Randy Orton is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and obviously one of the greatest wrestlers of our generation. So I mean, to replace him with somebody the caliber of Brock Lesnar, who we know is a megastar, that's a good match. The whole lifting of the ring moment, that was. You didn't expect that. You also saw the attempted cash-in by Theory in that sequence, so that was another piece of that puzzle. That made for a good match. I can't argue. That's a pretty solid match. I'm gonna throw one at you that I feel like it's probably on your list, but I could be wrong. I mean, how can you not put Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins Hell in a Cell on there? Like, that match was freaking awesome.
No, great match. I didn't put it on my list. Your list has got to be only so big, and I didn't put it on my list. The only issue that I had with that going on was I felt that a lot of times when you have a trilogy of matches, you kind of have a back and forth of who's winning, who's losing. But having Seth Rollins be the loser every single time out, especially too when obviously Cody Rhodes, that was a jaw-dropping moment when he came into the ring looking the way he did, absolutely. But to still have then Cody Rhodes the way he was go over again, it kind of tainted it a little bit to me that it wasn't more of a back and forth feud, that it was just Cody Rhodes getting over on Seth Rollins like he's Hulk Hogan in the 90s.
I'll say this, just to add to that. I get 100% get what you're saying. I would say this. I would add this piece to it. Having Cody Rhodes put on a quality match of that caliber with his injury and how gruesome that looked when he took his jacket off, that speaks volumes. And I think that's Cody Rhodes in a nutshell. Cody Rhodes is a tough son of a bitch. I mean, that's just how he is. And he put on a quality match. Seth Rollins doesn't have bad matches, so even with Cody Rhodes being compromised, Seth Rollins still sold like a champ. He made Cody Rhodes look good anyways. We know Cody Rhodes can put on a good show himself. He's a good wrestler, and what better way for him to sail off into the sunset as he has a long road to recovery, because we haven't seen him yet. Maybe we'll see him in another month or so at Royal Rumble, but that's a perfect way to say, all right, fans, got this serious injury. I got my hand raised. I'm hitting the road. I'll be back down the line. I'll see you soon. That to me, that moment was really, that was impactful, and it stinks that Cody Rhodes had to have that injury, especially as quickly as he was back in the fold. But it was great that he put on that match regardless of the injury. Kudos to him. He's a tough SOB. That's I gotta go back to you. What's your next match?
So I'm going to move over to AEW for a minute, and MJF CM Punk dog collar match from AEW Revolution earlier in the year. Now, obviously, CM Punk, we had issues with him at the end of the year when it comes to, being in the company and leaving the company and the whole backstage scrimmage. But MJF and CM Punk in that dog collar match was probably my favorite AEW match of the year.
Wow, I can't argue with that. I mean, that's a quality match. I mean, I'm a little sour on CM Punk, so I can't put CM Punk on my matches these days. I just the way he handles business, he kind of rubs me the wrong way these days. But that was a quality match. I remember watching that vividly. That was a good match. I'll throw an AEW match in there as well. I mean, I could pick from a few. I have a couple listed here. We'll start with The Acclaimed versus FTR on Dynamite just a few weeks ago. That was a hell of a match. That was one of the best televised, non-pay-per-view matches that I've seen. That could have been a pay-per-view. That could have been a main event caliber pay-per-view, match. I thought the Acclaimed looked great. I mean, FTR always puts on a good show. I think how FTR puts other tag teams, in a good position like the Acclaimed. To me, that was just a lot of fun. The FTR, like we've talked about, I mean, they're arguably one of the best tag teams in the world, and that's for a good reason. The Acclaimed are up and coming, and they're very much over with their scissor me daddy ass gimmick that they have going on. But they still have work to do when it comes to in ring. They're still good. I'm not saying they're not good. They're still they're not FTR. FTR's been doing it for a lot longer. Obviously, they're veterans. But the Acclaimed, to get that rub, even in a match with FTR, that was a quality match. And to have it on Dynamite, nothing wrong with a free top tier match in 2022 to be on your local TV network.
One match I'm going to pick, and this might be a little biased because I was there. It is one match that I was in attendance for, but it's not the match you're going to think, I guess, when it comes to Survivor Series. It's going to be Theory, Seth Rollins, and Bobby Lashley, the triple threat for the U.S. title, and where we thought Austin Theory was dead after cashing in his Money in the Bank on Seth Rollins and failing just about 2 weeks prior to becoming the U.S. champion in a triple threat match that I thought worked great. Nobody did the sitting duck gimmick. I feel like, especially at the end, how we incorporated like the finisher into one person while the other person was doing a finisher to another person. I really enjoyed that match. Maybe because it's a little fresh in my memory because it wasn't too long ago, but that match is one of my tops of 2022.
I mean that match right there. I mean that put Theory into the next stratosphere, into a higher. I don't know. I want to say stratosphere, but I mean it seems like he's broken through after we thought he was kind of dead in the water after that debacle cash in. But obviously it was done the right way in hindsight, from WWE. So I mean that match was that was a quality match. I'm going to go back to the AEW though. I have to go back there one more time. I think you'll remember this match from over the summer at, I think it was Fight for the Fallen, I believe it was. Daniel Garcia and Bryan Danielson. That was a clinic on wrestling. If you're looking for somebody that, you want to watch, you want to show them great wrestling, that's the match you watch. That's what you show people, and you say, this is why I love watching wrestling. I don't need these crazy spots or these crazy different, tables, ladders, and chairs type matches. If you're looking for just a great wrestling match, Daniel Garcia and Bryan Danielson, that was a lot of fun. That to me, just, again, just a great match between two really good wrestlers.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm going to add the final AEW match for me would be the Jericho Appreciation Society versus Moxley, Bryan Danielson, Kingston, Santana, and Ortiz, and that Anarchy in the ring at Double or Nothing. Again, AEW's got a lot of these 5-star, 30-minute classic matches, and New Japan style, if you will. But from just a fun perspective, from easy to watch, rewatchability, I'm going to pick that one. And I will finish the favorite match by saying, one match that I wanted to include, it's not Roman Reigns' best match, but entertaining nonetheless. And I would say another person who had a real great year, and I want to put in my favorite wrestlers for the year, but maybe in 2023 I could. And we're talking Logan Paul. He had the match against Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel. I think that match was very highly entertaining, especially for a match in where you believe the finish. Roman Reigns is not going to lose the championship to Logan Paul. But they found a way, and the same with his match against Drew McIntyre, to make you believe that Roman Reigns might really be losing. And I think with Drew McIntyre, you kind of believed that he could, so it was possible. But with Logan Paul, you're like, he's not losing. But then you're watching the match and being like, is he – you suspend disbelief. You literally for a few seconds here and there go, no, Logan Paul are they really going to let him beat Roman Reigns? I mean, that's how close he came a few times to beating him. So that's why I think that match was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, Logan Paul, you know me, I'm not the biggest fan of the Paul brothers as a whole, but hey, I give them credit where credit is, due. They've done really well. They've made a lot of money. They've drawn up a lot of interest. So good for them. And that was a pleasant surprise for me. I wasn't sure what to make of Logan Paul in WWE. I mean, that was something I was like, when I saw his name, I'm like, oh God, not this YouTube guy. Like, what are we doing? And he surprised me. I mean, he's one of I would say if he's not the best, he's up there with maybe my boy McAfee as one of the best celebrity matches that I've seen. I mean, he put on a hell of a
Especially
show.
the way he started in 2021 at WrestleMania as that like special enforcer in the Kevin Owens match and Sami Zayn, and it was like awful. It was like, just get out of here. Nobody wants you here. He found a way to turn that around pretty good.
Yeah, he did. And speaking of some great, one more great match for me. I got to throw this in. How can I leave leave talking wrestling matches of the year without putting Briscoes and FTR at the recent Ring of Honor pay-per-view? That match was
another dog collar match.
Yeah, another double dog collar match. That's another match that, like, yes, it's a gimmicky match. It's not a traditional wrestling match because you have the dog collar aspect of it. But if you're trying to show somebody how entertaining wrestling is, you can put this on tape and just let people watch, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, now I see why you're into it as much as you are." That to me was one of the best matches of the year. I mean, those boys, those are two of the best tag teams in the world right now. I mean, obviously the Young Bucks are in there, the Usos are in there, but you have two of the best tag teams in the world putting on a match like this. It's hard to argue having them as either. I mean, you could have either one as your top tag team. I don't personally. You could have either one as the top tag team in the business, and I don't think too many wrestling fans are going to give you flack for it because of how great they are. Both of them are. Again, the Usos to me are the best tag team in the world right now, but Briscoes and FTR, I wouldn't have an issue if someone told me that was their best. One of those teams was their best tag team.
Absolutely. So let's move on to favorite pay-per-views, and this is how we'll end our best of 2022 here. Favorite pay-per-views, kind of going off a lot of those same matches. It's crazy to think because like Royal Rumble and WrestleMania are not on this list for me. I found them entertaining, sure, and they were good. I would even say WrestleMania has been better, obviously, this year than it had been in a few years. But it's not on my list this year. One random one that's on my list I was at that I thought was an all-around solid pay-per-view. Extreme Rules back in October. You had the Fight Pit match. You had the strap match. You had the great six-man kind of tag team match to start the show. Overall, I think that is one of the better WWE pay-per-views of 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to put AEW Double or Nothing. I mean, that was one of the better cards of the year. I thought, I mean, from start to finish. I know you're going back. I mean, the buy rates are what they are. It was back in May, but Double or Nothing was a hell of a show. I mean, I'm just looking at this card. I mean, holy smokes. I mean, Wardlow, MJF, remember that whole situation? That was a lot of fun. I mean, you got to see the Hardys and the Young Bucks. That was fun. I mean, I'm just looking through this card, and I mean, it was a lot of fun. And you can't forget Death Triangle. I know I mentioned that. Here's another faction we forgot to talk about. The House of Black. That's a pretty good faction as well. That was the House of Black defeating Death Triangle. That was a hell of a match. And then you can't forget about Adam Cole, Samoa Joe. I mean, that was a great match. And then let's see. I mean, I'm just looking through this match. And then here's a name that you haven't seen in a while. Kyle O'Reilly defeated Darby Allin. That was a good 10-minute match. And then if you want to go even to the one match here, it would be Jericho Appreciation Society, and that was the one you were talking about with the Blackpool Combat Club. I mean, how can you not like that?
My AEW pay-per-view on my list, I got one, and it's the most recent one. It's Full Gear. I just liked it. Kicked off with that steel cage match with Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy. And let's say AEW, a lot of their pay-per-views, to me, they're a little repetitive because they're all good. They're all long, and they're all just solid wrestling, not a lot of gimmicks. And that's kind of what I appreciate recently by WWE, where like the pay-per-views seem different from one another. Where Roman Reigns isn't on this pay-per-view like he is the last pay-per-view. This one's main evented by Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle. This one's main evented by a tag team match. Like they switch things up a little bit, and probably because they have more pay-per-views. The AEW pay-per-views are always just like, this is going to be a 4-hour 10 matches are all going to get 30 minutes each kind of pay-per-view. But Full Gear, because I did enjoy that probably more than some of the others with the cage match with MJF winning the title there at the end. And Athena, on the card, or the Jamie Hayter, sorry, on that card. Overall, I think that to me was my favorite AEW pay-per-view of the year.
I can't argue with that. I mean, that's another that actually was on my list. That was one of the other AEW shows in particular that I really liked. Now I do have to go back to the most one of the more recent shows for WWE. It was Survivor Series, the whole War Games. That was just, to me, that was just a lot of fun. I just really enjoyed. I even liked. I guess I get. Even the worst match of the night still had star appeal with Ronda Rousey and Shotzi, because you got Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
So if that's your worst match of the night in my book, and you have Ronda Rousey on it, that's a pretty good pay-per-view. Pretty good pay-per-view. And we already talked about it. Austin Theory, Seth freaking Rollins, Bobby Lashley, for the triple threat for the title. That was one of the better matches that I've seen. And then how can you not like that War Games match with the Bloodline, the Brawling Brutes? That was
Survivor Series was a great pay-per-view. They found a way to make people interested where there's not a lot of stakes on the line. It's like old school wrestling where, the championships aren't necessarily on the line here, or number one contenderships. There wasn't a lot of matches. There was 5 matches total. Every match essentially, other than the one delivered, but that's okay. Every other match, though, there was no, I guess, filler. There's no bathroom break kind of matches scheduled in there. You got War Games, then you follow up War Games with AJ Styles and Finn Balor. Then you have the U.S. title match. That's great. You got the women's title match, and even though it wasn't that great, it seemed like it could have been better. And then you got War Games again. It was a concise pay-per-view. It didn't go on too long. It didn't seem too short. It was the perfect 3-hour length, 5 matches. Everybody got their time. Everything seemed different. Like I said, the War Games match is different than your AJ Styles versus Finn Balor one-on-one match. I think it was a solid pay-per-view.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, to me, it was one of the better pay-per-views, especially for WWE this year. I mean, I got a surprise for you. I got one show that I know we've kind of touched on it, just a little bit ago. I mean, how can I not put Ring of Honor Final Battle on this on shows of the year? I mean, yes, it's not AEW, it's not WWE, but they put on a hell of a show. I mean, I'm just looking. I mean, obviously we talked about the Briscoes and FTR. We talked about that. But all these matches, I mean, Athena, I know you kind of, you were throwing Athena in there for a second, but Athena beating Mercedes Martinez for the Women's Championship in Ring of Honor, that was fun. I mean, I'm just looking through here. I mean, Wheeler Yuta, Daniel Garcia. I mean, another great match by 2 really good wrestlers. And then, I mean, look at here. You got Claudio defeating Chris Jericho. I mean, come on. I mean,
a lot of title changes.
And don't forget Samoa Joe. You know what I mean? It's a good show.
Yeah, no, that was a solid show. One show I'm going to put up there that a lot of people, for some reason, and all the lists that I've read, have had this as their WWE pay-per-view of the year. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to call it that. But I think Clash at the Castle was an enjoyable show. Obviously, we talked about the Sheamus Gunther match. We talked about Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns, especially too for the crowd there, and Drew McIntyre being from the United Kingdom. Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins on that card. I think it was a solid show. Was it a stadium show? Not necessarily. I think it was more symbolic because of the fact that they haven't been there for so long, and it was kind of just it felt like a post-COVID show in the sense of just cool to return to crowds again, or at least in the England sense, cool to return to having a major pay-per-view for the first time in 30 years. But it was a solid show nonetheless. I won't put it as my match or pay-per-view of the year, but a solid show, and it's on my list.
Yeah, no, it's a quality show. I mean, even going back and watching, watching the Rey Mysterio Edge, that situation against the Judgment Day, and at that point, Rey was with, or Dominic was with Rey at that point, so that takes you back a little bit. But now he's obviously in Judgment Day. But I mean, that was a good match. I mean, it's and even Liv Morgan and Shayna Baszler wasn't a terrible match. It still went 11 minutes. And then, obviously the match of that night, obviously we already touched on it, was Gunther and Sheamus. That was one of the best matches I've seen in a long time. And it's not your average wrestling match. It was just a fight, and I loved every single second of it. And the match went about 20 minutes. I would have been happy with another 10 because they were just kicking the crap out of each other, and I just loved it.
I'm going to add SummerSlam on my list as well. And it's great because, again, I wasn't there. It would have been great to be there. Love to go to all these shows. I happen to go to some of the stadium shows this year that weren't as good, like the Royal Rumble, which is strange because normally the Royal Rumble is a surefire good show. It found a way to really drop the ball this year in 2022. A lot of people have it as like the worst WWE pay-per-view of 2022. I don't know if I'd go that far because of the star power, and the Royal Rumble is still entertaining nonetheless. But SummerSlam, I think, was the better of those shows. Just because, again, WrestleMania is so hard to judge because it's not a show anymore. It's like a weekend. It's, we even see things where like Stone Cold's on night 1 and he's on night 2. So it's like bleeding into, trying to decide which night is better than which. But SummerSlam delivered. Obviously, we saw the return of Bayley, and the debut of Damage Control. Logan Paul and The Miz, I thought, put on an amazing match. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar in the main event, I thought was a great match also. Overall, like I said, I think it was just an entertaining, good summertime show worthy of a stadium.
Now, I got to ask you, though. So if there's anything you want to see in particular for 2023, it doesn't matter AEW, WWE, Ring of Honor, anything. Is there anything you want to see in the wrestling business? Like, is there a certain superstar you want to see get pushed? Is there something out there you're like, okay, I need this in 2023?
No. I think, as long as whatever they do with Roman Reigns, I feel like his championship reign after these many years is coming to a close. As long as whatever they do with that seems like it makes sense and it's right, I get worried, because when you do that, when you take the belt off him, when you have him lose, you can't go back on that. And this whole 3-year-long saga comes to a close. So I hope whatever they do with that is right. There's the talk of him working back-to-back nights, working with The Rock, facing Sami Zayn at Elimination Chamber in Montreal, all these kinds of things for near the end of his run, which will probably end at WrestleMania. But however they do it, just make it feel like, okay, it didn't go somewhere for nothing. I feel like the Undertaker streak kind of did that when he lost to Brock Lesnar. It wasn't that, Brock Lesnar wasn't a believable person to beat him, absolutely. But you kind of wonder, why now? This is where this culminates. We get all the way here, and then he just loses to Brock Lesnar, somebody who doesn't need the push, who's not really special, who's not somebody he hasn't beaten before. So I hope they don't do something like that with Roman.
Man, you stole my thunder because that's exactly what I was going to say. I just want them not to drop the ball with the whole Roman Reigns end of his title reign, which we expect to come at WrestleMania. That is something I don't, they have to do this right. This thing has been going on for so long. You can't drop the ball on this. This is one of those situations where you got to do it right. And if you don't, it's going to leave a bad taste in a lot of wrestling fans' mouths. I'm sure some pockets, depending on what happens, they're going to be not happy. You're not going to make everybody happy. But if you can make the majority of the people happy with how things kind of popped off at the end, that's something I'm going to be looking forward to. And for me, for 2023, I just want to see what's going to happen with MJF because his contract expires December 31st, 2023. So January 1 of 2024, by different folks out there, different insiders, that's when his contract expires. So this year of 2023 is going to be a big year for MJF because he's going to have that bidding war in 2024. So for me, I can't wait to see what happens with MJF. Let's just see
if he has a year like Aaron Judge did in baseball where he finds a way to either raise his stock or lower his stock. And Aaron Judge obviously rose his stock. But, yeah, he's got 1 year to essentially prove himself. And a year's a long time. Who knew that we'd be where we are with like Sasha Banks, CM Punk, stuff like that. So a year's a long time. There's lots of months between now and when his contract ends. So let's see if he continues to improve his stock, at least maintain his stock, or, you never know. And that's why we tune in every single week. Yes, and
again, MJF is must-see TV, so I'll be tuning in. I know you'll be tuning in. It's going to be a fun 2023, and I can't wait to do more heel-to-face podcast episodes in the brand new year. It's going to be fun. 2022 has been a fun year. Looking forward to 2023.